The moon is often the first thing people notice when the world grows quiet. It rises without sound, and yet it seems to gather sound around it, as if every field, every roof tile, every lake and courtyard is listening. In old places, people looked up at it and felt that it belonged to no single country, no single language, no single age. It was there over farmland and over deserts, over harbours and temple steps, over sleeping animals and over roads that had not yet been named. The moon made the night feel less empty. It gave the dark a shape. And because it was so regular, so faithful, so calmly returning, people gave it stories. Some stories were tender, some were practical, some were full of the soft logic that appears only in folklore, where the same light can mean harvest, weather, tides, luck, memory, and dream. The moon became a visitor, a keeper of time, a pale traveller, a mirror, a face, a bowl, an egg, a lamp, a sign. In the quiet of a long evening, it is pleasant to remember that so many cultures looked at the same sky and found different ways to make peace with darkness. In ancient Mesopotamia, the moon was not a distant ornament. It was part of the rhythm of daily life. People watched lunar phases closely because months themselves were measured by the moon's return. A new crescent could mark a beginning. A full moon could mark a brightness in the middle of the month, a kind of midpoint lantern for the world. In such a place, the moon did not only shine, it counted. And counting by moonlight had a gentle logic. The sky was always changing, but not in a wild way. It was change with a pattern, waxing, waning, disappearing, returning. A person standing in a doorway at dusk could look up and know, without a clock, that time was moving in its slow circle again. In some old traditions, the moon was associated with writing and record keeping because it offered a visible mark of sequence. The changing shape above could be read like a page turning, a crescent, then a fuller curve, then the round face, then the thinning edge again. Even now, people often feel a small comfort in that cycle. It is one of the oldest repeated shapes in human life. There is something restful in a recurring light. In ancient Egypt, the moon was also carefully observed, though the sun usually took the larger share of splendor. Still, the moon mattered. It belonged to the night, to measurement, to the hours that fell after sunset, and to the subtle work of keeping track of time. Some moon gods were linked with counting, healing, and the night's quieter labors. The moon in that world was not noisy or triumphant. It was precise. Precision can be beautiful when it is gentle. A temple wall in moonlight does not appear the same as it does in daylight. The edges soften. Relief seems to drift a little farther back into the stone. A carving that looks severe under noon light can seem almost kind at night. The moon seems to forgive surfaces. It removes sharpness. It leaves outlines and suggestions. That might be one reason people across the world told moon stories with a sense of softness. The moon has always made ordinary things seem touched by distance. In Greece, the moon was often imagined through figures like Selene, who drove her silver chariot across the sky, and later through Artemis, whose relation to the moon gave her a cool, watchful presence. These are not loud stories. They move with a certain dignity. A chariot across the night sky is a grand image, but it is also quiet because night itself is quiet, and the moon's passage is slow enough to feel ceremonial. Some older myths, especially around the edges of the classical world, imagined the moon as a place of longing. Lovers might look up to it, travelers might use it, poets might compare it to a face, a veil, a pearl, or a lamp behind thin cloud. And in that comparison there is no hurry. The moon invites noticing rather than conquest. In Roman life, lunar observation remained useful and familiar. The rhythms of the calendar, the rites of home, the planning of markets, and the timing of festivals all lived in a world where the sky mattered. The moon was one of the great public clocks, visible to everyone, whether they were rich or poor, educated or not, whether they lived in a villa, a barracks, a workshop, or a small apartment high above a crowded street. It is easy to imagine a city at dusk, the last carts passing, a baker closing a door, a fountain still running in the square, and above it all, the moon appearing between rooftops like a quiet guest. In China, moon traditions became especially rich, and they remain so in many forms today. The moon was connected to reunion, longing, balance, and the passage of seasons. There are old stories of figures on the moon, and there are poems that speak to it as though it were a companion listening from far away. In some tales, the moon holds a palace. In others, it holds a rabbit. In many, it simply holds distance, which is itself a kind of poetry. A moon viewed from a courtyard can feel both near and unreachable. It hangs above rooflines and trees, yet no one can touch it. That strange closeness and remoteness is part of why it has stayed so alive in folk imagination. The moon is visible enough to feel personal, but far enough to remain mysterious. And perhaps that is true of many beloved things. They stay with us because they do not fully yield. One of the simplest moon customs in many places is the act of looking up together. Family groups, neighbors, travelers, children standing in a yard, all pausing for the same bright circle in the dark. A shared moon can make a place feel less lonely. Even people who have never met can know in some small way that they are under the same light. That may be why the moon so often appears in songs and lullabies. It can be both present and distant, and that is a comfort. It is a symbol that does not demand explanation. It simply returns. In the old agricultural world, the moon helped guide planting, harvesting, fishing, and travel. Not every practice was scientifically exact in the modern sense, but the accumulated memory of communities was often attentive and patient. Farmers noticed moisture, frost, animal behavior, and the feel of the soil around different phases of the moon. Sailors watched its influence on tides. Shepherds watched it rise over hills. People did not have the luxury of ignoring the sky. And even now, though machinery and calendars do much of the work, there is still a small ancient instinct in noticing the moon before bed. It is a reminder that the world continues outside the window, and yet it does so calmly. In parts of Europe, the moon gathered many folk beliefs. Some said that moonlight had special effects on sleep, on silver, on plants, on water. Some believed that certain tasks were better done by the waxing moon, while others should wait for the waning. A few of these customs survive in garden advice and domestic rituals, though often in softened form, half practical and half poetic. This blend is common in folklore. A habit begins with observation, and then, over years, becomes a story. A person might notice that seeds planted at a certain time seem to flourish. Another might say that the moon was helping. And so a simple note about timing becomes a small myth of cooperation between sky and soil. The story survives because it feels meaningful, even when it is also a little uncertain. Uncertainty is often where folklore lives most comfortably. The moon also belongs to thresholds. It is linked with evening, with midnight, with the moment when one activity has ended and another has not yet begun. In many traditions, thresholds are powerful. Doors, shorelines, crossroads, windows, and dusk itself are all places where one state changes into another. The moon, hovering above these thresholds, seems to preside over transition. That is perhaps why it appears in so many stories of transformation. People under the moon are not always the same people they were by day. In folklore, someone might become more thoughtful, more secretive, more susceptible to dreams, more aware of memory, or more inclined toward wandering. The moon does not need to change people directly. It only needs to make the world feel permeable. A moonlit path has that quality. It is visible but not fully certain. The stones can be seen but their edges are softened. A field can be crossed but the grasses may look silver and strange. A dog may bark once from a distance, then stop. The night itself seems to breathe. There are old stories in the British Isles about moon dogs, moon calves, and strange happenings under lunar light. Some of these tales are playful, some cautionary, some simply curious. The moon in folk belief often becomes a place where odd things can happen without demanding a full explanation. A patch of frost, a pale halo, a shadow that seems slightly too long. These are not always omens. Sometimes they are just the night arranging itself. But people are pattern makers, and in the dark, pattern making becomes almost a form of warmth. In Norse and Northern European traditions, the sky could be imagined in many ways. But the moon still mattered as a marker, a traveler, a visible timer of months and seasons. Long winters made any light feel precious. A moon over snow is especially quiet. The world seems outlined, almost etched. Trees become black lines against white ground. Roofs hold a cold shine. Smoke from chimneys drifts upward and breaks apart. In such landscapes, the moon feels less like decoration and more like a practical mercy. The same is true in desert places, where moonlight can reveal the shape of dunes, stones, and distant walls in a softened palette of blue and silver. A desert moon can make an ancient road seem like a pale thread. A palm grove might look almost unreal, as if it were painted into the night. The moon has always had an artist's eye for simplification. It reduces clutter, it leaves the essentials. There is peace in that. Some cultures link the moon with women, fertility, cycles of the body, and the ebb and flow of life. That association appears in many forms, though never in exactly the same way from place to place. It is one reason the moon often sits near goddesses, mothers, healers, and figures of renewal. But it is also broader than that. The moon belongs to change itself. It changes shape visibly, and therefore becomes a natural emblem for any change that repeats but never quite returns in the same way. A person watching the moon month after month may feel both familiarity and difference. The crescent returns but not with the same clouds. The full moon returns but not over the same season. The sky stays but time moves. Folklore loves this kind of repetition because it feels like the world remembering itself. In many places, the full moon was a time for festivals, for gatherings, for small acts of reverence. Lanterns would be lit, cakes or offerings prepared, poems recited, children carried outside to see the sky. A festival does not have to be loud to matter. Sometimes it is just a table, a cup, a shared glance upward, and the awareness that the moon is in its bright phase again. The moon, after all, is not always a symbol of darkness. It is often a symbol of visibility within darkness. That distinction matters. The moon does not remove night, it makes night readable. And reading the night is one of the oldest human habits. If you have ever seen moonlight on a river, you may know how quietly it can move. Water seems to carry the sky without holding onto it. The reflection breaks and reforms with each ripple. It is both there and not there. Folklore often gravitates to water for the same reason. Reflection creates a double world. Moonlight on water suggests a second moon, softer and more unstable than the first. People have long found that image useful. A reflected moon can stand for memory, for longing, for the self seen indirectly. It is a quiet symbol but a deep one. We do not always encounter meaning directly. Sometimes we meet it in a surface trembling a little in the wind. In Japan, moon appreciation has long been associated with elegant attention to season, weather, and simple forms. To look at the moon is not merely to observe a celestial body. It is to register the quality of the evening, the shape of clouds, the fragrance of trees, the arrangement of a room with an open window. The moon there can feel like a point around which the whole evening settles. This is one of the many ways people have practiced gentleness with the night. Not every culture feared darkness. Some cultivated it, some made room for stillness, some learned to see how moonlight changes the color of paper, stone, fabric, and skin. The moon can make a plain object feel ceremonial. A bowl on a table, a sleeve hanging from a chair, a wooden veranda, a lantern with its flame nearly spent, all can seem worth looking at twice. There are also many moon stories in the Americas, where different nations and communities have held their own deep and varied understandings of the night sky. In some traditions, the moon is a helper in timekeeping or a relative in the larger family of the cosmos. In others, it is connected to hunting seasons, tides, or the cycles of life and travel. It is important to remember that no single moon story can hold them all, and that too is comforting in a way. The moon has never belonged to one voice alone. The same is true of the moon in oral storytelling. It appears in many versions across many languages and often in the simplest language of all. A child points, an elder answers, a song rises, a proverb is spoken. A field is silvery with frost. A journey becomes easier because the moon is bright. A lonely night becomes less lonely because the moon is there to witness it. There is a small dignity in being witnessed by something so old and so calm. In medieval Europe, people kept lunar calendars for religious observance and practical life alike. The moon helped determine festival dates, seasonal attention, and the feel of the month. It was not merely decorative, it was embedded in the structure of time. Monks, farmers, householders, and travelers all lived in a world where sky and schedule were not separate things. This may sound distant now, but in a quiet evening it is easy to imagine. A wall calendar today may show squares and numbers, but an older sense of time was more fluid, more curved. The moon helped give that curve a visible form, and curved time feels different from straight time. The moon also encouraged song. It is hard to say exactly why, but perhaps the shape of the moon invites melody. A round note, a sustained note, a repeated line. Lullabies often mention the moon because it belongs naturally to calm repetition. The moon does not rush across the sky. It glides, it keeps its own pace. It is patient with watchers. In many lullabies, the moon is not frightening. It is a guardian of sleep, a lamp above the roof, a quiet companion for children and elders alike. Even when a culture tells darker stories about moon creatures or moon influence, there is often still a softer side, a side that simply watches and waits. A soft watchfulness can be reassuring. There are folk beliefs about moon halos, rings around the moon that sometimes appear when thin ice crystals high in the atmosphere scatter light. Long before meteorology explained them, people noticed them as signs, whether markers or simply strange beauties. A moon halo can feel like a veil of glass around the night sky. It makes the moon seem both protected and remote. Some people saw halos as warnings, others as blessings, others just as unusual weather made visible. Whatever the interpretation, the appearance is memorable. The eye is drawn upward, and the sky seems to have quietly added a second circle around the first. The moon is full of circles. Many folklore traditions are too. A circular thing encourages returning thought. A person can look at it again and again and feel no need to finish the thought quickly. The moon is perhaps one of the few things that can be stared at without solving it. That is a gift. Even in times when people feared eclipses, the fear was often rooted in the moon's familiarity. When something reliable changes suddenly, the change feels enormous. An eclipse is one of those moments. The moon is still there, but the world briefly reorders itself. Shadows behave differently. Light becomes uncanny. People in many cultures responded with ritual, prayer, noise, or watching in silence. That silence, too, is a form of meaning. If you have ever watched an eclipse from a rooftop or a field, you may remember that the experience feels both ancient and exact. It is a celestial event, but it also feels very personal. The same moon that has hung over countless ordinary evenings can, for a little while, look as though it has entered a dream. The darkness deepens, then eases. The usual world returns, but with a different memory in it. Folklore often turns such moments into stories of pursuit, concealment, or temporary loss. Yet even without those stories, the event itself is enough to inspire wonder. The moon also has a quieter power in daily life, the power of scheduling rest. Its light can shape when people are willing to travel, work, gather, or sleep. Before electric lighting, moonlit nights mattered much more. A bright moon could extend activity. A dark moon could send people inward earlier. So the moon was not only a symbol, it was a practical participant in human rhythms. That kind of participation is easy to overlook now, but perhaps this is why moon folklore remains so appealing. It remembers a world in which the sky was not background. It was part of the room. The moon's hidden face, the side never seen from Earth in the familiar way, adds another layer to that quiet mystery. For centuries, people knew the moon as a face turned toward them. The far side remained unseeable from the ground, not secret in the dramatic sense, but naturally withheld. That withheld half became a place for imagination. If a face is always partly turned away, people begin to wonder what it looks like in private. Folklore often fills such spaces with palaces, gardens, travelers, animals, or ordinary emptiness. Sometimes the mystery is given a name, sometimes it is simply left as distance. The imagination is often most peaceful when it is allowed to remain incomplete. In many old stories, the moon is not the source of power so much as the witness of power. It sees the tides rise. It sees lovers parting at gates. It sees fishermen returning. It sees wolves on hills and snow on courtyards and lamps in upper windows. It sees the same fields through many seasons. In this way, it becomes a keeper of continuity. A keeper of continuity is a beautiful role. Not a ruler, not a conqueror, not a judge, just a presence that returns. There are moon traditions in which the moon is tied to memory. This makes sense because memory itself has phases. Some days a memory is bright and full. Some days it is crescent thin. Some days it vanishes for a while, only to reappear later from an unexpected angle. The moon's cycle mirrors that experience in a simple, visible form. If a person has ever missed someone, they may understand this. Absence is not always the same as ending. Sometimes it is just a different phase of attachment. The moon has helped many generations think about loss in a gentler way. In some villages and old homes, moonlight was treated with a careful respect. Children were told not to point at it too much, or not to sleep with a window open to a strong beam, or not to cut certain things under moonlight. Whether these were warnings, habits, or folklore, they reveal a desire to organize the night into something manageable. The moon was powerful enough to merit rules, but familiar enough to live with. This balance between familiarity and power is central to so much folk belief. The moon is not an enemy, it is simply too large to ignore. And yet it remains quiet. That quietness is perhaps its most enduring trait. Even when stories give it faces, palaces, or animals, the moon itself continues as a silent circle in a dark sky. It does not explain itself. It does not answer directly. It shines, fades, returns. That might be why people return to it in moments of uncertainty. The moon can hold uncertainty without resolving it. It can be watched during illness, during travel, during waiting, during winter, during the long half hour before sleep. It gives the eye something steady to rest on. The eye likes a steady thing. In several traditions, the moon is connected to the idea of hidden knowledge, not because it reveals everything, but because it reveals enough. In moonlight, shapes are clear enough to follow, but not so clear that every detail is exposed. That partial knowledge feels suited to nocturnal reflection. One can understand the outline of a path without seeing every stone. This is perhaps one of the most bedtime-friendly truths about the moon. It offers just enough. There is a pleasure in that modesty. The moon never tries to become the sun. It accepts its own kind of light, reflected, softened, borrowed, and beautiful. In folklore, this humility sometimes becomes a virtue. A quiet lamp can guide as well as a bright one if the world is willing to slow down and look carefully. A moonlit road teaches that lesson gently. Many poets have understood this. They have written of moonlit gardens, of silver branches, of roofs washed pale, of silence deepened by a round white disk overhead. But even before poetry, ordinary people knew the feeling. A moon over a sleeping town can make the whole place seem like a held breath. Windows glow faintly. Dogs curl in their sleep. A railway line, a canal, a row of stones all seem to listen. The moon turns the ordinary into a low, sustained wonder. In some folktales, the moon is imagined as a place where lost things gather. A missing sock, a vanished thought, a word one was about to say and then forgot. Such notions are playful, of course, but they also carry a real emotional logic. The moon is associated with retrieval because it returns. It comes back after darkness, and it does so again and again. So it is not surprising that people sometimes gave it the responsibility of keeping what the day misplaced. There is comfort in imagining that the moon is good at holding on to things. The moon also helps mark human celebrations. Weddings, harvest feasts, lantern festivals, seasonal gatherings all have at times leaned toward its light. Even when artificial lights became common, the moon remained a natural decoration. It needed no invention. It simply appeared. In rural places, the full moon can still feel like a village event, even when nobody has announced it. Doors open a little wider, curtains shift, a cat crosses a path, grass shines with dew. The whole landscape seems to have stepped into a quieter register. That register is rich with folklore because folklore often begins in ordinary attentiveness. Consider for a moment how many small things happen under moonlight. A moth circles a porch lamp and then drifts away. A puddle catches a silver edge. A child sleeping turns over and murmurs something in a dream. A farmer checks the sky before dawn. A fisherman notes the tide. A traveler looks for the next village. A grandmother closes a shutter softly. None of this is dramatic, and yet each scene has its own stillness. The moon is there for all of it. In older cosmologies, the moon was sometimes paired with the sun in an elegant balance, day and night, heat and coolness, outward brightness and inward reflection. Those pairs appear across the world in different forms. It is one of the ways human imagination likes to organize the heavens. The moon, with its borrowed light, often becomes the gentler half of the pair, though not the weaker one. Gentle things can have great staying power. The moon has lasted in memory because it has never needed to shout. There are communities where moon phases still guide farming stories, weather sayings, and household customs. Even where scientific calendars dominate, the old language remains around the edges. People say a moon is good for something. They glance up before opening a garden gate. They notice the brightness over a field. Such habits are often half inherited and half affectionate. They preserve a way of being in the world. To be in the world with the moon is to accept slowness, and slowness can be deeply restful. The moon changes, but not too quickly. It does not rush the listener. It gives the eye a place to settle and the mind a reason to wander without becoming lost. There is no need to solve the moon. It has already survived countless generations of wandering. Sometimes, in old stories, the moon is said to look back. This is a lovely notion, even if it is only a figure of speech. A thing that is looked at so often begins to feel almost reciprocal. The moon does not answer in words, but it answers in rhythm. It was there last night, and it will be there again unless clouds intervene, and even then the sky retains its place for it. This kind of regularity can be a quiet medicine. If you have ever sat by a window late at night and watched moonlight move across a wall, you may know how slowly it seems to advance. A little farther across the floor, a little more silver on the curtain, a little less darkness in the corner. The scene changes so gradually that the mind almost stops resisting it. One simply notices, then notices again, then lets the noticing become softer. That is a good rhythm for falling asleep. There is also the moon's relationship to tides, one of the most patient forms of movement in the world. Oceans lift and fall in great breaths influenced by the moon's gravity. Though the mechanism is now understood, the experience still feels ancient. The sea rising and easing back can seem like the shoreline is listening to the sky. Fisher folk and coastal communities have always known this intimately. They did not need equations to know that the moon mattered to the water. They had boats to launch, nets to set, harbours to trust. The moon was part of their practical knowledge, but it was also part of their songs. Songs are often where practical knowledge becomes tender. In many moon folk songs, the language is not ornate. It is simple and repeated. The moon goes up. The moon comes down. The night is clear. The road is white. The child sleeps, the field rests. Such lines are easy to remember because they resemble the moon itself, uncomplicated, returning, patient. And in remembering them, we also remember an older tempo. There is a particular quiet in a village or small town when the moon is bright and most lights are off. A chimney, a tree, a gate, a patch of yard all become more distinct than they are by day because the day is busy and the night is not. The moon reveals without insisting. It is content to leave some corners dim. This partial illumination gives the world a gentle dignity. A world does not have to be fully exposed to be beautiful. In folklore, the moon is often linked to secrecy not because it hides things aggressively, but because it lights them softly. People might meet in moonlight when they do not wish to be seen clearly. Stories of hidden lovers, secret paths, and quiet visits often favor the moon for precisely this reason. It makes concealment possible without complete darkness, yet the same moon that conceals also comforts. It is a witness to both privacy and openness. It sees the person who walks alone and the group that gathers together. This duality may be why moon imagery remains so durable. It carries both solitude and companionship. The moon also appears in children's games and nursery rhymes. It is one of the first celestial bodies most children learn to name. That early naming gives it a place in memory before the world becomes more complicated. A child points to the bright circle, hears a simple answer, and stores the shape of that exchange for later life. Years afterward, the moon may still feel familiar in a way few other objects do. Familiarity matters. It softens awe into comfort. And awe, when softened, can become rest. The hidden face of the moon, which circles beyond our view, has inspired modern curiosity as well as old imagination. We now know that it exists, of course, and that it looks different from the side we usually see. Yet the emotional effect is older than the explanation. Humans have always been drawn to the thought that a beloved thing has an unseen side. The moon's far side gives that feeling a sky-sized form. Not everything that matters is visible from one angle. Perhaps that is another reason the moon suits folklore so well. Folklore itself has an unseen side. A tale told in one village may resemble another told far away, yet the details shift. A moon goddess becomes a moon rabbit. A calendar practice becomes a festival. A weather sign becomes a proverb. The shape stays, but the surface changes. Like the moon, stories grow and wane, and they keep returning. If one listens closely to old moon stories, a pattern emerges. The moon is rarely merely decorative. It is a marker of time, a light for travelers, a companion to work, a keeper of tides, a presence in love and loss, a symbol of change, and sometimes a place where the mind can set down its burdens for a while. That is a large list for one object, but the moon has had a long career. It has been available to everyone and owned by no one. That may be its deepest folklore, a shared sky seen differently by many yet still shared. As night deepens, the moon often becomes the brightest thing left. A window may reflect a little of it. A street may take on a silver stripe. A field may seem to float. Clouds may pass and briefly veil the light, then drift on. The moon remains patient through all of it. There is something almost domestic in that patience. The moon feels like a familiar lamp in a large old house, one that has been tended for generations. No one can quite remember who first lit it, and no one needs to. It continues because it continues. In that sense, the moon is one of the oldest comforting objects humanity has ever known. And because this story is about folklore, it is also about the countless small human acts of meaning-making that gathered around that light. A gesture, a chant, a calendar note, a story at the hearth. A verse whispered to a child, a farmer's glance, a sailor's calculation, a festival lantern, a window left open, a prayer offered upward, a quiet smile under a pale sky. None of these things are large by themselves. Together they form a long companionship with the moon. The moon does not hurry, it keeps its ancient pace. It has watched kingdoms rise and fade, watched roads become highways, watched candlelight yield to electric glow, watched old stories survive in new forms, watched people continue to look up anyway. That is perhaps the most restful fact of all. Even when human life changes quickly, the moon remains a steady reminder that some rhythms are slower than worry, slower than the news of a day, slower than the small anxieties that crowd the mind before sleep. The moon gives those anxieties a little distance. It does not solve them. It simply stands apart from them, bright and round and calm. And from that distance, many things seem less urgent. So if you are listening now in a dim room, or with your eyes closed, or while thoughts drift loosely and then settle, imagine the old moon above a sleeping field, above a harbour, above a stone wall, above a line of trees. Imagine it over water. Imagine it over rooftops. Imagine it over a road that no longer has to be traveled tonight. The light is soft. The hour is late. Nothing is asking for more than this moment. The moon has been here through many kinds of evening, and it will be here through many more. A small pale circle in the dark, patient as memory, gentle as a closing door. And now, as the sky remains quietly itself, the moon continues on, and the night continues with it, and the old stories, softened by distance, rest for a while in the silver air. Somewhere a cloud passes, somewhere a field lies still, somewhere the sea lifts and falls. Somewhere a window reflects the last bright edge of the moon, and then slowly all of it grows quieter still. In a few traditions, the moon was also used as a teacher of humility. It reminds people that borrowed light can still be beautiful, that a reflected thing can still guide the way, and that even partial brightness is enough for certain tasks. A traveler does not need noon in order to find a road. A gardener does not need sunrise in order to notice dew. A child does not need explanation in order to feel comfort. The moon allows for enough. That phrase, enough, is a peaceful one. Enough light, enough time, enough silence, enough sky, enough room for thoughts to loosen and drift. The moon often seems to live in that middle space between absence and abundance, never empty, never overwhelming, simply sufficient. Many old households would have understood the usefulness of sufficient light. A single lantern and the moon together could make a room workable, a path visible, a table intimate. A little brightness can change the feeling of a night. It does not need to dominate, it only needs to arrive. The moon arrives like that regularly without announcement. There are stories in which the moon is a lover, stories in which it is a parent, stories in which it is a lantern, and stories in which it is a far-off dwelling. Sometimes it is all of these at once. The human imagination is generous that way. It can place a face on the moon and then forget for a while that it placed one there. It can speak to the sky as if the sky were listening and then be comforted by its own voice. That kind of self-comfort is not trivial. It is one of the quiet tools of being alive. If one listens to folklore long enough, one notices how often the moon helps people think about cycles that are not fully under their control. Growth and decline, appearance and disappearance, arrival and return. The moon embodies these patterns without complaint. It does not resist the waning phase. It does not cling to fullness. It simply becomes what the cycle requires. That may be why it has become such a lasting companion in stories of acceptance. There is a tenderness in accepting one's phase. Not every moment must be a full moon moment. Some are crescents, some are thin outlines, some are veiled by cloud, and some are almost invisible. Folklore does not always say this directly, but it implies it again and again. The sky changes, the world endures, the light returns, and in the meantime people tell stories. So the moon remains as it has long remained, at the center of a quiet human habit, to look up, to wonder softly, to notice the shape of time in the night, and to find in that shape a little companionship. The moon is not loud in any of these roles. It is not hurried and it is not demanding. It is simply there, turning, glowing, fading, returning, a silver witness, a nightly clock, a pale lantern above forgotten roads, a face in the dark that never fully gives itself away. And as the world settles further, and the edges of thought become gentler, the moon continues its slow path overhead, while old stories, weather signs, lullabies, temple shadows, river reflections, and the memory of many quiet evenings drift together like thin clouds across a calm sky. Nothing needs to be concluded too firmly tonight. The moon itself prefers a softer ending. So let the night keep its shape, let the silver light thin a little, let the room grow still, let the old folklore rest where it is, and let the moon remain outside the window, steady and distant, as the hours pass very gently onward. There is something reassuring in the idea that a body so remote can still feel familiar. The moon has always been near enough to matter and far enough to remain mysterious. That balance is part of its folklore and part of its lasting comfort. If it were closer in a practical sense, if it were less changed by distance and shadow, perhaps it would lose some of its quiet power, The imagination needs a little space to breathe. The hidden face of the moon has often been that space. For as long as people have watched it, there must have been a sense that there was more to it than the obvious silver circle. The familiar side brightened by the sun was one thing, but the unseen side invited another kind of thinking. What else belonged there? What kind of silence lived there? What stories might have waited where no ordinary gaze could reach? In many traditions, what cannot be seen is not simply empty. It is inhabited by possibility. The mind is patient with possibility at night. Ancient sky watchers knew how to be patient too. They measured months by the moon's changing shape. They timed rituals by its returning crescents. They noticed that the moon could be a guide, but not a fixed one. It changed, and in changing it taught timing. Farmers, priests, travelers, and dreamers all learned from that alteration. The moon's phases gave shape to work and worship alike, and the hidden half, though not visible to the eye, still belonged to that larger rhythm. Even unseen, it was part of the pattern. There is a kind of old wisdom in that. Some early calendars were lunar or partly lunar, marking not just dates but moods of the sky. In Mesopotamia, moon gods such as Sin or Nana were linked with the passage of time and the soft authority of night. In many ancient places, moonlight was not merely decorative. It was practical, sacred, and exacting. It helped determine feast days, fasts, harvests, and offerings. The moon was both clock and omen, both measure and mystery. And as its light crossed the earth, the unseen side remained a quiet partner to all of it, holding its own in the dark. In Egypt, where the sky was so often imagined as a great living body, the moon took on many poetic roles. Sometimes it was associated with Thoth, the divine scribe, whose calm intelligence belonged to record-keeping, language, and the order of things. The moon's phases seemed to fit such a figure because they suggested thought moving in stages. A bright idea, then a partial one, then a hidden one, then the return of clarity. The heavens made an image of mental life, and the moon's hidden face became part of that larger, gentle lesson. In Greece, the moon often moved through the stories of Selene and Artemis, and later through the layered identity of Hecate, whose association with thresholds and crossroads gave the night a more watchful character. In these myths, the moon could feel almost like a veil, not a solid thing, but a presence shifting between worlds. The hidden side was not discussed in scientific terms, of course, but it fit the emotional architecture of those stories. A thing can be partially veiled and still profoundly known. That is one of the quiet peculiarities of folklore. It knows that mystery is not the same as ignorance. Mystery is a way of holding knowledge gently. The moon's hidden face also belongs to a very modern kind of wonder, one that arrived only after careful observation and much later after spacecraft began to travel where myths had once floated freely. For a long time, people on Earth never saw the moon's far side directly. They watched one face repeat itself. It became the known moon, the reliable moon, the moon of old poems and lantern scenes. The other side remained a thought, almost a rumor, and rumors in the right age are fertile soil for legend. Some imagined hidden continents there. Some imagined pools of silver water. Some imagined mirrored cities or gardens that bloom in darkness or mountains sharp as teeth. Others imagined a face more barren than the familiar one, perhaps scarred, perhaps secretive, perhaps untouched by the histories written in Earth's night. The truth, when it arrived, was less mythic in one sense and more wondrous in another. The far side was heavily cratered, rough and beautiful in its own severe way. It held no obvious paradise for the eye, but it did hold silence, and silence is one of the oldest forms of grandeur. The first time humanity saw images from the moon's hidden face, it was as if a long private room had been opened after centuries of rumor. Not all mysteries vanish when seen. Some simply change shape. The far side turned out to be not a hidden kingdom of storybook splendor, but a landscape with its own deep dignity. The contrast itself is soothing in a strange way. It reminds us that wonder does not depend on ornament. A cratered plain under black sky can be as moving as a jeweled fantasy if one allows it enough time. and the moon, in both its known and unknown aspects, continue to invite storytelling. In some Chinese traditions, the moon is connected with the rhythms of harmony, the balance of change, and stories of figures dwelling in its luminous distance. Chang, the moon goddess, remains one of the most beloved images in that broader tradition, associated with exile, longing, and the gentle loneliness of the sky. Her companion, the jade rabbit, is another figure of patient labor and soft mythic repetition. The rabbit is said to pound herbs or elixirs, a motion that is almost meditative. It is easy to imagine such a creature on the hidden face, not because the science suggests it, but because folklore loves the idea of a task continuing quietly where no one is watching. There is comfort in imagining labor without hurry, a rabbit at its mortar, a goddess at her window, a moon turning through its phase. In Japanese folklore, the moon has been held in a different kind of tenderness, sometimes as a place of elegant distance. The old appreciation for transience, for beauty that exists only briefly and then passes on, fits the moon very well. A cloud over the moon can feel like a small event. A full moon can feel like a celebration. A thin moon, barely there, can feel like a whispered memory. The hidden side in such a sensibility is not a loss but an extension of subtlety. Not every truth needs to stand in the center of the room. Some truths belong to the far edge of a thought. The moon has also appeared in countless indigenous traditions around the world, each shaped by its own landscape, language, and seasonal life. It may guide hunting, planting, ceremony, or story timing. It may be person, relative, sign, or companion. Often the moon is not only a celestial object but a participant in relation, part of a living web rather than a separate ornament. This is a profoundly restful way to understand the sky. The moon is not simply up there. It is in conversation with the earth. It rises for a reason. It watches with a kind of mutuality. That feeling of mutuality can make the night less lonely. There are also the practical, quiet facts, the ones that sit so calmly beside myth that they almost seem to belong there. The moon's gravitational pull helps shape the tides, moving the oceans in slow, reliable breathing. It influences the way light falls on the land. It affects the timing of certain animals, the habits of nocturnal creatures, the safety of coastal work, the sense of depth in a dark field. Centuries before these mechanisms were described in precise language, people felt them. They did not need equations to know that the moon was involved in the choreography of water. The sea already told them. Perhaps that is why sea lore is so saturated with moonlight. Fishermen, sailors, and coastal communities have long watched lunar phases with close attention. A bright moon could aid navigation or reveal rocks, while a dark one could deepen risk and mystery. The same moon that supported a route could also conceal danger in shadow. That duality made it a natural symbol for wisdom itself. Clear but not too clear, helpful but not total. The hidden face of the moon has become a kind of emblem for all that remains just beyond reach. It stands for the part of a thing that cannot be held in the hand, the side of meaning that turns away without refusing us entirely. In human relationships, too, there is always a hidden face. There are private thoughts, unspoken griefs, inward weather. People present one side to the world and carry another in silence. Folklore understands this. It often gives the moon the same double nature that people live with every day. One side for showing, one side for keeping. This is not deception. It is simply wholeness under conditions of light. Many old tales seem to know that the unseen is not necessarily dangerous. Sometimes it is merely private. Sometimes it is sleeping. Sometimes it is waiting. The moon's far side, once inaccessible to human eyes, became a perfect symbol for those states. Waiting without impatience, sleeping without ending, privacy without hostility. It is a remote place that still belongs to the same moon seen from Earth. The relationship is intact even when the view is partial. That idea has a healing quality to it. Not all of a thing must be visible for it to be real. Not all of a self must be expressed for it to be whole. Not all of a story must be told at once for it to remain true. The night often teaches this through dimness alone. When cloud covers the moon, the sky can become even more interesting. The moon is no longer the lone bright object, but part of a shifting atmosphere. Its light diffuses, softens, and changes. The cloud itself becomes a kind of screen for imagination. One can think of hidden faces then, and veiled kingdoms, and distant chambers lit by no ordinary lamp. Sometimes what obstructs vision also deepens feeling. A cloud before the moon can make the moon seem more intimate rather than less. The same is true of old stories. A fragment can sharpen longing. An incomplete record can increase reverence. A lost lineage can make the surviving line feel precious. Much of history is like moonlight passing through a lattice, partial, patterned, beautiful because of its limits. There are ancient inscriptions and fragments and temple remains that still speak in this way. They do not explain everything, but they preserve atmosphere. They preserve a posture of attention. A broken tablet from Mesopotamia, a worn lunar symbol on an old seal, a carved disc from a distant burial site, a wall painting under a pale layer of dust. These things are not the moon itself, but they catch something of its old authority. Human beings have always left marks under moonlight, and those marks have become part of the larger story. In some burial traditions, the moon may appear as a sign of passage, an escort through darkness, a reminder that life continues by phase rather than by sudden disappearance. This is a gentle idea. It says that endings may be transitions, that what dims may also be preparing to return. The moon does not cling to one state. It gives a visual metaphor for impermanence without panic. Even the darkened moon is still the moon. Even the hidden side is still part of the whole. And so human beings, listening to the sky, found ways to imagine continuity. There is a great comfort in continuity, not the rigid kind, but the kind that allows change while retaining identity. The moon changes every night and yet remains recognizable. It is never exactly the same, but it is always itself. This has made it a favorite of poets, priests, and ordinary watchers who may never have written a line but have still felt the beauty of that persistence. The moon becomes a reliable stranger, a familiar unknown, a beloved enigma. In the old world, before electric light dissolved so much of the night, the moon carried more visual authority than it does in brightly lit cities. It had to. It was one of the largest visible lights that people could trust. Streets were not always lit. Paths could be muddy or rough. Sea and field alike depended on its presence. Even so, the moon never fully controlled the dark. It worked with it. It softened edges rather than abolishing them. This partnership between light and shadow is central to its folklore. The moon is not an enemy of darkness. It is its companion. That companionship may be why moon stories often feel more restful than solar ones. The sun can be glorious, but it also insists. The moon invites. It asks nothing but attention, and even that softly. Its hidden face extends this invitation beyond sight. The eye may not follow, but the mind can drift there with ease, imagining the far side as a place of continued quiet, where the same laws hold in a different arrangement. When astronomers and mythmakers meet in the imagination, they do so almost naturally around the moon. The celestial body has been studied with ever greater precision, yet it has never lost its story quality. Its craters have names now, its orbit is measured, its composition is known in impressive detail, and still it remains the object of lullabies and children's questions, of love poems and old warnings, of rituals and calendars and soft, reflective fear. Knowledge has not emptied it. If anything, knowledge has given more room for awe. There is a small and lovely irony in that. The more humans learn, the more the moon seems to widen. Perhaps that is because the moon's beauty is not only in what it is, but in how it has been held by the human mind across time. It has traveled through myth, science, and memory without losing its quietness. It has watched empires rise and fade. It has hovered over cities made of clay, stone, bronze, brick, glass, and steel. It has looked the same to a shepherd and an astronaut, though the meanings around it have changed. It has been named and renamed, addressed as deity, companion, object, symbol, and place. and yet its hidden face remains a reminder that no naming exhausts a thing. No one sees all of the moon at once from Earth. That simple fact has fed centuries of reverie. The far side was not visible until instruments made it so, and even now it is not a face familiar to the everyday eye. It feels almost ceremonial to think that for most of human history, the moon was only partly known in that literal sense. People lived, loved, prayed, and died under a body they could never fully inspect. Their relationship was intimate and incomplete. That is not a flaw in the relationship. It may be what made it durable. Some bonds are strengthened by distance. The same is true of memory. We do not remember everything, only selected textures, scenes, phrases, and feelings. Yet those fragments can be enough. A moonlit road remembered decades later, a curtain moving beside a window, a grandmother pointing upward, a story told in a low voice at the edge of sleep. These are not comprehensive records, but they are alive. They function the way moonlight functions. They illuminate a small area and allow the rest to remain softly undefined. There is no need to force the rest. The oldest folklore often knew the value of restraint. It left spaces open for listener and sky alike. The moon's hidden face is a lesson in that same art. It suggests that absence of sight is not absence of being, that the far side of a thing may be at least as real as the near side, and that human beings may not need complete access to be in relationship with wonder. Sometimes nearness is enough. Sometimes repetition is enough. Sometimes a returning crescent is enough to support a whole cosmology of feeling. And the night, patient as ever, permits this. In the quiet between stories, one might imagine all the old observers who stood under moonlight and simply looked, not with telescopes but with attention. They may have watched a lunar halo form in moisture-rich air. They may have noted how a moon low on the horizon appears larger, though the eye plays its own soft trick. They may have noticed that moonlight can wash color from a landscape, turning greens and browns into silvers and greys, making familiar places seem newly symbolic. A field becomes a page. A river becomes a ribbon. A roof becomes a pale shape among dark trees. Under such light, even ordinary objects seem to join folklore. A well becomes deeper. A road becomes older. A tree becomes patient. The hidden face of the moon, in that sense, is not only the far side of the lunar sphere, it is also the unseen dimension of everything illuminated by it. Every moonlit thing possesses a side we cannot fully inspect. Every shadow has a border that suggests more. Every reflective surface carries a little secrecy. Folklore thrives in these margins. It speaks there because the margins are kind to it. One of the oldest human pleasures is to infer a world from traces, a footprint in dust, a ripple in water, a crater seen from afar, a legend told by firelight, a phase of the moon returning just when it should. These are all forms of reassurance. They say that the universe is not random beyond all recognition. There are patterns, there are returns, there are structures in the dark. The moon's hidden face belongs to this reassurance too, because the unseen is not chaotic simply because it is unseen. It has shape, it has texture, it occupies its own place in the ongoing map. Sometimes that is enough to settle the mind. There are moments when looking up feels like remembering something older than thought. The moon does that. It can call up ancestral instincts, sleeping languages, and the deep calm of nocturnal attention. A person need not believe any specific myth to feel this. The moon is cross-cultural in its effect. It encourages awe without requiring certainty. It gives just enough narrative to hold the gaze, and just enough silence to let the gaze rest. This balance is a rare gift. Folklore often carries it beautifully because folklore was never meant to overpower reality. It was meant to accompany it, to give shape to the shape already there, to make the sky a little more inhabitable, to tell a shepherd why the sheep were uneasy, a child why the moon seemed to follow the carriage, a sailor why the tide had shifted, a widow why the night felt less empty when lit by a pale circle overhead. These stories were practical in the deepest sense. They helped people live with uncertainty. And the hidden face of the moon, unknown for so long, became one more place to set that uncertainty gently down. What is hidden is not always threatening. Sometimes it is simply the part not yet visited. The far side of the moon was, for centuries, a frontier not of conquest but of imagination. It was a sealed chamber in the architecture of the sky. Many cultures had their own way of imagining such chambers. Some filled them with deities, some with animals, some with the souls of the dead or the workshops of celestial artisans, some with nothing at all, which can be another kind of reverence. The empty room in a sacred building can be more moving than the crowded one. Still, human beings prefer to populate the unseen with tenderness. A hare, a goddess, a watchful spirit, a dream kitchen, a library of pale stones, a sleeping city. These images are not arguments, they are atmospheres. And atmospheres, especially at night, can be almost as nourishing as facts. The moon has been both a literal object and a vessel of collective feeling for so long that the two cannot easily be separated. We know more now than many ancient skywatchers could have dreamed, yet we still return to the old languages. We still speak of moonrise, moonshadow, moonlit paths, moon baths on the sea, moon madness, moons of memory, moons of love. The hidden face enlarges that vocabulary without needing to alter it. It simply reminds us that even the most familiar companion has an unknowable side. That reminder may be one of the moon's gentlest gifts, to know a thing partly and to love it anyway, to live under incomplete knowledge and still find beauty, to let a hidden side remain hidden without turning the unknown into a threat. This is a skill for bedtime and for living, so let the old stories continue in their softened way. Let the moon keep its separate hush. Let ancient temple stones, sea calendars, lunar myths, and modern images from the far side rest together without needing to be reconciled too quickly. They are all parts of the same long human gaze. They all belong to the same patient sky. And if the night seems especially deep now, that may only make the moon seem nearer in spirit. The room can grow quieter, breath can slow, thought can become less linear and more like drifting water. The hidden face of the moon, never fully available and never fully absent, can remain what it has always been, a distant companion for those who are willing to accept a little mystery with their rest. The far side turns, the near side shines, the earth listens, old names soften, old questions sleep, the sky remains, and in that remaining there is no need to hurry toward an ending. The moon does not rush. It simply continues, carrying its quiet histories across the dark, while the centuries beneath it drift toward sleep one by one, like small boats returning to harbor at last. Long before anyone saw photographs of the moon's far side, long before the first soft blur of its hidden geography appeared in human hands, the moon was already full of invisible places. That is one of the quiet pleasures of old astronomy and old mythology alike. The most distant things were often the most intimate in imagination. A sky object could become a house, a field, a mirror, a vessel, a face, a companion, a warning, a promise. And when a part of that object remained unseen, people did not always feel disappointed. Often they felt invited. To live with the moon was to live with phases. Waxing and waning were not merely visual facts. They were a rhythm that entered calendars, planting, ritual washing, festival nights, fasting days, and the timing of journeys. In Mesopotamia, where the sky was read with extraordinary care, the moon was tracked not only for its beauty, but for its messages. The crescent could signal a new beginning, an omen, a schedule for kings and priests and merchants who needed the night to be legible. In ancient Egypt, lunar cycles were woven into a broader sacred order in which heaven, river, temple, and afterlife all mirrored one another in subtle ways. In many places, the moon was not a distant rock. It was a living part of the world's arrangement. The hidden face, then, belongs to a very old human habit, the belief that what cannot be directly seen still matters deeply. There is something restful about that belief when it is held gently. Not every mystery demands solving at once. Some mysteries are better approached like a quiet courtyard at dusk, where the stones retain warmth from the day and the fountain makes a sound so soft it seems almost to be thinking. The far side of the moon was like that for a very long time, not empty in the human mind, though perhaps empty in the practical sense. It was a place beyond the easy reach of the eyes, and so it became a place where stories could gather without needing proof. Some of those stories were cosmological, part of a vast effort to explain the order of things. Others were private, carried by families who passed down moon lore in the same way they passed down recipes, songs, and warnings about weather. In rural traditions across Asia, Europe, Africa, and the Americas, the moon often guided planting and harvesting, cutting hair, gathering herbs, and choosing the right night for travel. People observed how a bright moon could flatten shadows and change the behavior of animals. They noticed how certain insects emerged, how dogs barked differently, how fishermen preferred some phases over others. The moon's nearness was practical. Its hidden face, by contrast, was pure invitation. It was not used in the same way because it could not be used in the same way. That made it fertile ground for wonder. In Chinese tradition, the moon has long carried one of the most enduring stories of all. The tale of Chang, who ascends to the moon and lives there in solitude, often accompanied by the jade rabbit, who is said to be preparing medicine or elixir in an eternal, delicate labor. The story is calm rather than dramatic when told in its older, more lingering forms. It has the tone of longing rather than spectacle. The moon becomes a place of exile, beauty, and immortality, and the rabbit's small repetitive work gives the scene a timeless stillness. One can imagine, on a very quiet night, the way such a story would have comforted someone far from home. The moon is distant, yes, but distance does not erase companionship. It simply changes the nature of it. Elsewhere, the moon was thought of as a traveler's guide or a divine witness. In some ancient Near Eastern traditions, the moon god held authority over time itself, dividing the months and marking the passages of the celestial order. In classical antiquity, lunar deities such as Selene and Luna were associated with luminous passage across the night sky, the softness of silver light, and the cyclical return of form. The moon's ability to disappear and return made it especially suited to stories about transformation. It never stayed in one shape long enough to be taken for granted. Even in a world without telescopes, that was enough to make it seem alive with pattern and intent. And yet, in many folklore systems, the moon did not need to be alive in a literal sense to be meaningful. It only needed to be observant. A face in the sky, even a silent one, is enough to inspire thought about kinship between the heavens and the heart. The old stories often understood this better than later, more mechanical habits of explanation. They did not ask the moon to be a machine. They allowed it to remain a presence. The hidden face on the far side of the moon did not enter human imagination all at once. It arrived indirectly, through the slow expansion of knowledge. The moon, like the Earth, is tidally locked, so the same hemisphere faces us over and over as it circles our world. That fact is now familiar, but for centuries it was not obvious in the way that the moon's changing shape was obvious. People could see the same bright markings and darker expanses every month and still never know the other side. This is one reason the far side acquired such a special place in the imagination. It was not merely unseen. It was structurally hidden, a companion's back turned forever away. That phrase, the backside of the moon, is almost tender in its own way. It suggests privacy rather than secrecy. A back is not a denial of the front. It is simply the part that faces somewhere else. The geology of the far side, once finally revealed, showed a world that was not identical to the face familiar from Earth. The near side contains the broad dark maria that are visible to the naked eye, those volcanic plains that give the moon its patterned face. The far side has far fewer of these, and more highlands, more craters, more ruggedness, more ancient scars. For anyone listening late at night, this is a thought that can settle softly into the mind. Even a moon has asymmetry. Even a moon has regions of difference that were long concealed from those who lived beneath it. There is a quiet dignity in that. Ancient people did not know the geology, but they knew enough about difference. They knew that the side of a mountain facing the sun could be warm while the other remained cool. They knew that a river bend could hide a cove. They knew that a face could smile while carrying sorrow beneath it. They knew that a household could look whole from the doorway and still contain hidden grief, hidden joy, hidden labor. The moon's hidden face gave shape to an old truth: not everything essential is visible at once. A number of cultures use the moon as a timekeeper in ways that seem, in retrospect, astonishingly patient. Lunar months are shorter than solar months, so any lunar calendar must continually negotiate with the sun's yearly cycle. This negotiation created a beautiful complexity in ancient calendrical systems. Some traditions inserted extra months, others tied lunar phases to festivals and sacred seasons that drifted through the year in carefully maintained ways. The moon was not merely a light. It was an accountant of the dark, a keeper of return. And where there is return, folklore often grows strong, because return is one of the foundations of hope. The hidden face became, in the modern era, a new chapter in this long relationship between return and surprise. The first photographs from the far side did not destroy older myths, they merely changed the texture of wonder. To see unfamiliar craters, ridges, and basins was not to make the old stories false, it was to place them in a larger room. Folklore had always been comfortable with larger rooms. It knew how to leave space around a fact so that the fact could breathe. In some indigenous and traditional narratives, the moon is not only a body but a relative or elder. Such relationships are not metaphorical in a thin sense. They are modes of attention. To speak of the moon as kin is to adopt a discipline of respect. The sky is no longer a display but a community. The hidden face, then, is not hidden because it is withheld in hostility. It is hidden because even family members have private sides. Even friends have rooms we have not entered. That does not diminish affection. It can deepen it. One of the most striking things about the far side of the moon is how thoroughly ordinary it becomes once one has seen it. The imagination prepares for a palace, a mirror, a temple, a secret kingdom, and instead finds a landscape that is stark, cratered, and profoundly real. There is no need for disappointment here. Starkness has its own beauty. The absence of vast, smooth maria does not make the far side less moon-like. It makes it another expression of moonhood, as if the moon had decided to reveal its quieter habits. This too has a bedtime quality. A person in bed at night may be more attuned to soft asymmetries than bold displays. The room is rarely perfectly symmetrical. Light falls unevenly. A blanket drapes in one corner. A glass on the nightstand catches a thin glimmer. Outside, clouds might veil the stars, leaving only a handful visible. In such circumstances, the mind often slips naturally toward the moon because the moon itself is a master of partial disclosure. It offers enough light to navigate by, but not enough to eliminate the mystery of shadows. The hidden face extends that lesson beyond the horizon of direct sight. In folklore, hiddenness often takes shape as a moral environment. A hidden forest path may hold danger or wisdom. A hidden spring may heal. A hidden room may contain an ancestor's tools, a letter, a charm, a spindle, a bone needle, a small carved animal, or some other object carrying the long silence of history. The moon's far side belongs to this family of places. It was, for most of human history, the hidden room in the sky. And because people are meaning-making creatures, they did what they have always done with hidden rooms. They imagined who might live there. In some stories, the moon is inhabited by women weaving, by rabbits pounding medicine, by gods resting from labor, by lovers separated by fate, by children whose laughter became light, by old kings preserving their authority in an otherworldly archive. These images are not random. They cluster around themes of patience, care, labor, and cyclical time. Moon folklore is often domestic in the broadest sense. It concerns things that repeat: washings, harvests, arrivals, departures, birth, growth, diminishing, return. Even when the moon is made into a deity of great power, it often remains associated with rhythms that touch everyday life. The far side of the moon, seen in this light, is not an alien territory so much as an extension of a familiar habit, the habit of imagining that whatever lies beyond sight still belongs to the same order of things. This belief has helped communities endure darkness with less fear. It has also given poets and storytellers a durable material to work with. The moon can be approached scientifically, mythically, emotionally, agriculturally, navigationally, and spiritually without exhausting it. That is one of its most restful qualities. It is a subject that can receive many kinds of attention. There is also the matter of silence. The far side of the moon, as we hear about it in the age of spacecraft, is quieter in a symbolic sense because it is forever turned away from Earth's radio chatter. That fact has inspired a certain contemplative language in modern writing, a sheltered side, a remote side, a face beyond our noise. Whether one takes such language literally or not, it resonates with older ways of thinking. Many sacred places in ancient cultures were defined by their quiet, not empty silence but deliberate quiet. A mountain shrine, a grove, a cave, a tomb, a library, a deserted shore before dawn. The far side of the moon, though not sacred in itself to every tradition, has come to occupy a similar emotional category. It feels like a place where the world can rest. One can imagine ancient skywatchers receiving that idea with immediate recognition. They would know that quiet is not a lack. Quiet is a condition in which patterns become easier to hear. The moon's hidden face, by virtue of its invisibility, offered exactly that kind of listening space. It became a screen onto which centuries projected their longings, but it also remained faithful to its own material existence. The two things are not enemies. A human projection and a real cratered hemisphere can coexist. The mind is not always wrong to place a dream atop a landscape. Often, the dream is simply another way of noticing that the landscape exceeds us. The old civilizations that watched the moon were not naive. They were careful observers. They measured shadows. They tracked eclipses. They built calendars. They linked the moon's movements to agriculture, ritual, and kingship. Some of their records remain astonishingly precise. In Babylonian astronomy, for example, the sky was not merely mythic but meticulously tabulated. Patterns in lunar appearance helped predict future events, and celestial regularity became a foundation for thought. Yet even in such rigorous systems, the moon retained symbolic depth. Science and story were not always separated as neatly as they are in later ages. A number could live beside a god. A omen could sit next to a computation. A cycle could be both practical and sacred. That cohabitation is worth lingering over because it suggests a calmer relation to knowledge than the anxious idea that one must choose between wonder and fact. The far side of the moon exemplifies that calm. When its unseen geography was finally known, the effect was not the collapse of mystery but its redistribution. The mystery shifted from what the hidden face looked like to why it had inspired so many layered imaginings. The myth became part of the history of human attention. And history, when gently considered, is itself a kind of night sky. Many small lights separated by distance, still connected by pattern. Some myths about the moon emphasize punishment or exile. Others emphasize sweetness and fertility. In the myths of many lands, the moon is linked to women's cycles, to the timing of pregnancy, to birth and renewal. The association is ancient and widespread, though interpreted differently from place to place. It is easy to see why the moon gathered these meanings. Its phases are visible, recurring, and not entirely controllable. They resemble the hidden regularities of the body and the seasons. That resemblance made the moon a companion in the most intimate aspects of life. The hidden face adds another layer to this companionship. What is unseen can feel like the body's interior life, the side of oneself not easily addressed in conversation. Dreams belong here too. So do memories that flicker without settling, and affections that remain unspoken. The moon's far side is not only a geographical curiosity. It is an emblem of all the things that remain just out of view while still shaping experience. A person drifting towards sleep may recognize this intuitively. One does not need full clarity to rest. One needs a little trust in what continues beyond the lamp's circle. When modern missions eventually brought back images of the lunar far side, the photographs produced a new kind of stillness. The world had gained information, certainly, but the information was so stark and lunar, so beautifully indifferent to human preference, that it seemed to deepen the older moods rather than cancel them. Vast fields of cratered terrain appeared under hard, direct sunlight, with no atmosphere to soften the edges. There were no winds to blur the scene, no weather to polish the rocks. The result was a surface that felt almost ancient in a way the human mind could understand without effort. It looked like time itself had settled there in layers. Such images gave modern folklore a fresh object. Now the hidden face could be imagined not only in mythic terms, but also in relation to the new history of exploration. Space travel entered the moon story, and with it came another kind of human ritual: the careful naming of features, the mapping of basins and ridges, the decision to honor scientists, poets, and historical figures by attaching their names to lunar landmarks. This practice, though administrative in one sense, has an ancient echo. To name is to remember. To name is to place something into relationship. Across millennia, humans have named stars, mountains, wells, winds, and children for the same reason. Naming keeps the world within reach of affection. Even so, no name fully captures a thing as vast and silent as the moon. That is perhaps why folklore persists so readily around it. A named crater can live beside a moon goddess. A mapped basin can live beside a rabbit with a mortar and pestle. The moon tolerates these overlapping languages with an elegance that seems almost deliberate. It has never required a single interpretation. It has only required attention. There are old stories in which the moon is stolen, hidden, wounded, or dimmed. In some traditions, an eclipse is read as a moment of danger or transformation, when a celestial body is temporarily obscured by another. Such events inspired rituals, noise, prayer, and urgent watching. The moon's disappearance, even if brief, reminded people how dependent they were on its light. Yet the hidden face is a different kind of obscurity. It is not an interruption, but a permanent arrangement. That distinction matters. It suggests a more stable mystery, one that does not threaten continuity but coexists with it. The moon does not vanish, it only turns. That turning is soothing to contemplate. The planet beneath the moon also turns, though much of that turning is invisible to those who sleep. The Earth's rotation creates day and night, while the moon's own orbit contributes its phases and tides. These interlocking motions are among the oldest clocks we know. Before mechanical clocks, before printed calendars, before the precision of modern timekeeping, there was the sky's slow grammar. Ancient people learned to read it as carefully as later readers study manuscripts. The moon's hidden face belonged to that grammar as an unread line, a sentence never entirely visible from where humans stood. But even unread lines influence the meaning of a page. One can sense this in many early lunar myths. The moon often appears as a bearer of paradox. It is cold yet luminous, distant yet intimate, regular yet changing, absent yet returning, hidden yet obvious. This paradoxical nature makes it especially useful in bedtime narration, where the mind is allowed to drift among opposites without needing to resolve them quickly. Sleep itself is a kind of lunar state in this sense. It is a threshold where clarity loosens and recurrence takes over. We enter a darker rhythm and trust that morning will come back around. The hidden face of the moon, then, is not merely a subject of astronomy or folklore. It is also a lesson in patience. The things we cannot currently see may still be present, stable, and profoundly real. Ancient people understood this through practical life. A seed hidden in soil is not absent. A fish beneath the black water is not gone. A dead ancestor, in many traditions, is not erased from the family but relocated to a realm of continuing relation. The unseen is often the site of continuity rather than loss. The moon's far side, inaccessible to centuries of direct human sight, embodied that idea with unusual purity. Some of the most delicate folklore around the moon is not grand at all. It consists of little sayings about weather or memory. A bright ring around the moon may signal rain. A pale moon may mean frost. A moon seen through thin cloud can seem like a lantern behind gauze. Such observations are not always exact in a strict scientific sense, but they hold a cultural truth. People have long looked to the moon for signs. Even when the signs are subtle or unreliable, the habit of reading them joins a person to generations of watchfulness. To be awake under a moonlit sky is to participate in an ancient communal discipline. It is possible to imagine someone in the deep past looking up at the same bright disk and wondering, not about the face we know, but about the side forever turned away. Perhaps they did not have the vocabulary for such a thought, yet curiosity is older than vocabulary. A shepherd, a sailor, a priest, a child, a farmer, a widow, a smith, a palace astronomer, a traveller sleeping in the open air all might have felt the same silent pressure of the unseeable. What rests beyond the visible circle? What lies just outside the bright certainty? The question itself is almost a prayer. When the question remained unanswered, folklore supplied a soft answer without insisting on finality. That is one reason these stories endure. They are not harshly declarative. They understand the value of partial knowledge. They leave room for the ear to rest in the cadence of not quite knowing. And the moon, perhaps because it changes so visibly while remaining so far away, is the ideal companion for that kind of mental repose. There is also an understated beauty in the idea that the far side of the moon was not forever unknown. Humans eventually sent instruments there. They mapped it. They named features, they photographed it. They entered its silence if only by machine. Yet what was gained was not a simple replacement of wonder. It was a layered possession of wonder and measure at once. The old stories remain relevant precisely because they do not pretend to be the same kind of truth as the photograph. A myth about Chang does not compete with a high-resolution image of a lunar crater. They occupy different registers, like two instruments in the same nocturne. One gives structure. The other gives atmosphere, and atmosphere is what sleep often needs most. As the night deepens, the mind may begin to prefer the kind of knowledge that is not sharp at the edges. It may want a few stable images and then long stretches of spaciousness between them. A moon goddess walking alone, a rabbit grinding medicine, a cratered plane turned from Earth, an old calendar row of lunar months, a temple roof with a silver edge, a fisherman tying knots before dawn, a child tracing a crescent in a bowl of water, a historian in a library finding a fragment of an ancient tablet mentioning the moon by another name, a spacecraft slipping past the side no human eyes had seen before. These images can rest side by side without urgency. The ancient world is full of such quiet moon fragments. In Greece, lunar deities were associated with night journeys, with the instinctive feeling that darkness is not always hostile. In Rome, lunar imagery became integrated into public and private rites, along with a highly developed civic sense of time. In India, the moon is linked in many traditions to the cooling, nourishing aspect of night, to ritual offerings, to cycles of sacred time, and to poetic longing. Across the Americas, a wide diversity of lunar stories reflects the deep relation between moon observation and seasonal life. In many African traditions, moon narratives blend practical astronomy with moral teaching, ceremonial timing, and cosmological memory. The specific shapes differ. The underlying gesture is familiar. Look up, remember, return. The hidden face belongs to this same gesture. It is what remains after the first, easy viewing. It is the part that waits beyond habitual reference. It stands in contrast to the moon's familiar face, which people have seen so often that they can identify it at a glance. That familiar face has itself generated countless interpretations, from the man in the moon of European tradition to the rabbit or toad or woman seen elsewhere in lunar markings. Different cultures read different figures into the same dark patches, a reminder that the eye is not passive. It composes as it perceives. What we call the moon's face is partly moon and partly the mind's way of making a face out of pattern. The far side, unseen by naked eye observers, was not available for such immediate pattern making, so it remained freer in a sense from inherited images. This freedom may be one reason modern projections onto it have been so imaginative. Without the burden of being forever visible, the hidden hemisphere could become a canvas for desire. Some people imagined alien cities, others imagined secret natural wonders, others imagined only more moon, but moon in a more severe and lonely condition. The actual far side turned out to be less theatrical and more ancient than any of these fantasies, but ancient is often more moving than theatrical. The cratered plains do not shout, they endure. Endurance is one of the moon's quiet themes. It endures phases, it endures distance, it endures the gaze of countless generations, it endures human interpretation, it endures even the shift from mythic sky to mapped celestial body. Few things absorb so many kinds of attention without collapsing under them. Perhaps that is why the moon can feel like a teacher without ever speaking. It demonstrates how to be seen from many angles and remain itself. The hidden face in this sense becomes not just a physical hemisphere but a metaphor for resilience. There are parts of life that no one sees directly, years of ordinary effort, private griefs, small acts of care performed while others sleep. Ancient households knew this well. The work of grinding grain, mending cloth, fetching water, keeping fire, preparing medicine, and watching over children often happened in spaces of low visibility. Yet those hidden labors shaped the world as surely as any royal decree. The far side of the moon, hidden from Earth's direct line of sight, can evoke all those unseen foundations. This may be one reason the moon is so deeply embedded in bedtime feeling. Night reveals the hidden structure of days. It gathers the unwitnessed hours. It softens the hierarchy of visible achievements. A person lies down and for a while ceases to be useful in the loud sense. The mind may then drift toward older forms of usefulness, remembering, breathing, resting, healing, dreaming. The moon, with its patient visibility, belongs naturally to that sphere. If ancient sailors believed the moon could affect tides and navigation, it is because they were attentive to the world's larger breathing. The moon's pull was not merely physical but symbolic. It hinted that distant things shape near ones. This is another quiet fact of great usefulness. A body far away can move oceans. A story centuries old can shape a child's sleep. A myth can shape a calendar. A crater hidden from Earth can shape a nation's scientific curiosity. A pale disk in the sky can change the quality of a late walk home. Distance is not the same as irrelevance. The folklore of the moon's hidden face is, in the end, a folklore of respectful distance. It asks us to remain curious without becoming intrusive, to appreciate what is withheld, to let mystery stay soft around the edges, to admit that knowing and not knowing are often companions rather than enemies. Ancient civilizations understood this in their own ways. They watched the moon because it mattered. They imagined it because it exceeded them. They organized time by it. They prayed by it. They named it in many tongues. And in the midst of all that attention, a whole hemisphere remained unseen, which somehow made the relationship more complete. There is a very old human comfort in that pattern. A thing can be known in part and still loved wholly. A companion can have a hidden side and remain dear. A sky can hold more than one kind of truth. A story can be exact in feeling even when it is symbolic in form. A calendar can be practical and sacred at once. A crater can be named and still feel like an echo. A moon can be familiar from every childhood glance and still preserve a backside where the light never quite reaches our eyes. So let the hidden face remain quietly itself. Let the myths move around it without strain. Let the ancient watchfulness of stargazers, priests, farmers, poets, and night travelers settle gently into the present moment. The moon has long known how to keep both nearness and distance. It has long known how to be enough of a mystery to comfort us. And perhaps that is the deepest folklore of all, that the world is not less safe because some parts of it are unseen, but more survivable, because hiddenness gives the heart a place to rest. The far side turns in its ancient silence. The near side offers its small, familiar light. Between them, thought loosens. Between them, the centuries breathe. Old stories do not vanish. They grow quieter. They become the kind of knowledge that does not interrupt sleep. And so the moon continues its patient path, carrying with it the bright face we know, the hidden face we imagine, and all the soft human meanings gathered there over countless nights. A silver witness, a distant relative, a calendar of shadows, a keeper of return. While the world below turns toward darkness, the moon remains above it all, not demanding an answer, only offering a place for wonder to lie down at last. And there is something especially soothing in the fact that the moon has always invited both the practical mind and the drifting mind to the same quiet table. A farmer could look up and decide when to plant, when to wait, when to harvest, when to trust the soil a little longer. A navigator could look up and estimate direction. A poet could look up and feel a phrase gather itself in the chest. A child could look up and wonder whether the moon was following them home. All of these responses belong to the same patient object. The moon does not divide its admirers. It simply receives their attention and reflects it back in a softened form. In older civilizations, the moon was often measured with great care because it was useful to measure what could be depended upon. The repeating phases were one of the earliest clocks. Long before mechanical timekeeping became common, the sky offered a rhythm that could be seen by anyone with the patience to watch. The waxing crescent, the half-lit bowl, the bright round fullness, the thinning edge of the waning moon, each stage carried its own small instruction. The sky was teaching without speaking. Entire systems of months and festivals grew around this steady change. Some calendars stayed close to the moon. Others kept both solar and lunar order in delicate balance. A civilization did not need to know everything about the heavens to arrange its life around their patterns. It only needed to listen carefully enough to notice recurrence. This is one reason ancient records of the moon feel so intimate. In Mesopotamia, in Egypt, in China, in the Greek world, in the lands along rivers and deserts and coasts, the moon was not simply an object above the earth. It was part of the structure of daily expectation. People watched it because their work depended on it, but also because their imagination did. The same moon that marked a sacred month might also guide a night journey or light a courtyard where someone sat sewing after dusk. It belonged to public order and private reverie at once. That dual belonging gives the moon its strange, enduring tenderness. And if the hidden face of the moon remained unknown for so long, that only deepened the sense that there was more there than eyesight could settle. Human beings have always done this. When something important lies just beyond access, the mind begins to build careful dwellings around it. It does not always create grand fantasies. Sometimes it simply adds meaning to the margins. A mountain seen from one side suggests an unseen slope. A closed door implies a room still in use. A dark sea beyond the harbour suggests trade routes, storms, and stories carried from far away. The moon's far side played the same role for generations, except it was more complete, more absolute. It was a hidden landscape on a familiar body. That combination is especially powerful. It makes the imagination work gently and continuously, like a lamp left on in another room. For much of history, the moon's far hemisphere was not merely unseen. It was unknowable in a direct sense. The moon keeps the same face toward Earth because its rotation and orbit are linked in a quiet kind of lock. This synchronous relationship gave rise to a profound asymmetry in human experience. One half of the moon belonged to immediate acquaintance. The other half belonged to inference, speculation, and later to instruments and machines. Yet even before spacecraft brought images of the far side, people had already given it a life in thought. Folklore often begins where the eye ends. If there is a shadowed region, the mind soon learns to place a story there. Not because it must, but because the human relationship to the unknown is rarely empty. it is usually inhabited. Some of those imagined inhabitants were playful, some solemn, some strange. In various traditions, the moon was a place of exiles, lovers, immortals, or spirits watching from a distance. In East Asian folklore, the moon often became a home for solitude and moral reflection. The figure of Chang, drifting to the moon, carries with it both beauty and sacrifice. Her presence there is not noisy. It is suspended, luminous, remote. A moon resident in such a story is not a conqueror, but a reminder that elevation can be lonely. In older European tales, the moon could be a place of transformations or dreamlike crossings, where the ordinary rules of day loosened a little. In some indigenous traditions, the moon is a relative, a grandmother, a timekeeper, a keeper of cycles. In every case, the moon's distance allows it to hold meanings that might feel too large or too delicate for more earthly settings. The hidden face, though, has an especially modern kind of folklore as well. Once scientists learned that the moon's far side was real, measurable, and eventually photographable, the old imagination did not disappear. It changed shape. The far side became a place of scientific possibility, of radio quietness, of cratered silence, of lunar basins with names that sound almost like memory itself. The dream of mystery did not vanish when facts arrived. It simply became more specific. Humans are often able to love a thing more deeply after they understand a little of how it works. The moon's far side is not less magical because it has been mapped. It has become a different kind of magical, one with coordinates. That is a subtle but important comfort. Mystery does not have to mean absence of knowledge. It can mean the spaciousness that remains even after knowledge grows. The moon's hidden hemisphere still feels like a place where history has not quite settled, where old impacts remain visible in the rings and scars of ancient collisions, where lava plains darkened and cooled eons ago, where no atmosphere smoothed the features into softness. The surface preserves what happened to it with a kind of patient honesty. There are no oceans there to erase the evidence, no weather to round every edge, no vegetation to cover the stone. Craters remain, basins remain, the moon remembers by not forgetting. That too can be a calming thought. Some landscapes preserve their past in full view, and they do so without complaint. Astronomers have long been fascinated by this persistence. The moon is geologically quiet now, but not dead in any emotional sense. It simply speaks in older materials. A crater is not only a scar, it is also a record of time. A basin is not merely a hollow, it is a chapter in the moon's own long chronology. On the far side, the terrain is strikingly different in broad texture from the side facing Earth. The near side holds vast dark maria, those smoother plains of ancient basalt that make the familiar face of the moon seem like a face indeed, with its dark markings and pale highlands. The far side is more heavily cratered, more rugged, more crowded with the fingerprints of impact. For a long time, people had no image of this. They had only the feeling that such a landscape must exist because the universe seldom leaves its unseen portions empty. When photographs finally arrived from the far side, they did something beautifully quiet to human history. They confirmed that imagination had not been foolish. The hidden moon looked strange, but not in a way that contradicted dream. It looked like the moon had always been deeper than the human eye could prove, and the names assigned to its features carried a kind of slow poetry. Some are formal, some descriptive, some commemorative. Mare Moscoviense, the Sea of Moscow, though not a sea at all. The South Pole Aitken Basin, vast and ancient. Craters named for scientists, explorers, and thinkers. In these names there is a bridge between myth and measurement. We still like to honor places with language that exceeds pure utility. We call a hollow a sea. We call a crater a tribute. We let maps keep a little music. There is something almost bedtime-like in that act of naming. It makes the world feel not only known but tended to. A name is a small shelter. It allows us to return. Even old navigators and star watchers knew this in a practical way. To name a star, a phase, a port, a current, a season, was to give the mind a handle on vastness. The moon's hidden face, once photographed and catalogued, became less a blank mystery than a set of places one might someday revisit in thought or machinery. But even now, for most people, it remains distant enough to be symbolic. It exists at the border of factual knowledge and imaginative reserve, which is often where folklore is most alive. Some of the most enduring lunar stories concern descent and ascent. The moon as a destination, the moon as exile, the moon as a ladder of longing. In old myths, one could be taken up or sent away, transformed by celestial distance. The hidden face, because it is hidden, naturally becomes a site for these stories. One wonders what it is like to stand in a place no human eye has seen directly for so long. One wonders what silence would feel like there. The answer is partly scientific, partly emotional. There is no sound in the usual sense because there is no air to carry it. But there would still be the quiet presence of stone, the enduring shape of ancient impact, the slow warmth and chill of day and night, each lasting nearly 2 weeks. There would be light and darkness in long, measured alternation. If one were able to sit there, one might sense time not as hurried motion, but as an immense and gentle turn. That long cycle, the lunar day and night, is another quiet fact worth holding. The moon turns slowly in relation to sunlight, so the places on its surface undergo extended periods of brightness and dark. A crater rim may stand in dazzling light for days, and then in complete shadow for days. Such a rhythm is different from the quick human pace of morning and evening. It is more patient. It can make one imagine that the moon itself is resting between acts of illumination. The far side, especially, is a place where Earth's glow is never seen as the near side sees it. From there, our planet would rise and set for a distant observer on the moon's surface, and its familiar blue-white presence would be transformed into a celestial event. The home planet would appear as a great shining companion in the black sky, changing not with phases of the moon, but with the moon's own turn. This reversal is one of the loveliest facts in lunar study. What is a constant presence to us becomes the sky's wonder to another place. That thought carries a certain humility with it. Human beings are used to imagining themselves as the center of perspective, but the universe quietly refuses this. Every vantage point shifts the arrangement of what seems important. On Earth, the moon is the watcher. On the moon, Earth would be the remarkable object. And on the far side of the moon, Earth is absent from the sky entirely, hidden beyond the horizon forever for a person standing there. That absence must have inspired 1,000 inward impressions in the minds of engineers and astronauts alike. To stand on the far side is to stand in a place that cannot see home. And yet that absence has become practical, even beautiful in modern exploration. Radio telescopes and scientific instruments have found special value in the moon's hidden hemisphere because it is shielded from much of Earth's radio noise. There, in a relative silence of human signal, the universe can be listened to with unusual clarity. That is an exquisite idea. The place once imagined as mysterious because it could not be seen is now also valued because it can help us hear farther into the cosmos. A dark and cratered region becomes an ear. The hidden face becomes a listening device for the larger sky. Folklore and science meet there without conflict. One asks what might dwell in the unseen. The other asks what might be detected when noise falls away. Both are forms of attentive stillness. The moon's far side also reminds us how much of history has always depended on indirect knowledge. Before photographs, there were maps of seas never crossed by certain generations, descriptions of lands heard about from travelers, stars charted before anyone could touch them, and creatures imagined from signs and traces. Much of human understanding has been built from the edges inward. We see a little, infer a little more, and gradually make a world from the pattern. The moon's hidden face was once one more example of this method. We knew it through symmetry, through orbital mechanics, through the expectation that a sphere should have a far side just as a closed hand has a palm and a back. But knowing that it must exist is not the same as seeing it. That gap between certainty and image is where wonder likes to live. It is worth lingering a moment on how ancient people might have experienced the moon in its ordinary appearances, because the ordinary moon was already enough to sustain a lifetime of contemplation. The crescent in particular has always carried a special stillness. It is not full and commanding. It is fine-lined, almost tentative, a sliver of brightness that appears to have been drawn with a careful hand. In many cultures, the crescent became a sign of beginnings, of fresh cycles, of renewal not yet complete. A waxing moon seemed to grow from a thin promise into a round certainty. A waning moon seemed to withdraw into memory. These visible changes made the moon a teacher of temporal humility. Nothing stays full, nothing stays hidden forever. The hidden face itself, though, is a reminder that some hiddenness persists even when the cycle turns. There are things we only partly know, and that partial knowledge can still be enough to orient us. The same is true of myth. Myths are often treated as if they were trying to compete with fact, but in many cases they are doing something gentler. They are preserving a feeling structure around a phenomenon that fact alone does not fully satisfy. A people watching the moon may have been less interested in whether a story was scientifically literal than in whether it held the emotional shape of what they observed. The moon rises unbidden, changes shape, governs tides, brightens roads, and quietly disappears. That is already strange. A myth gives the strangeness a human voice. The hidden face deepens the need for that voice because it extends the moon's strangeness into a region of permanent concealment. A hidden world invites a hidden language. It invites allegory, caution, reverence, and sleep. Sleep, too, has a relationship with hiddenness. When one falls asleep, the outer world retreats. Familiar objects remain in the room, but they are no longer the whole story. Inner images begin to move. Memories rearrange themselves. The mind wanders through landscapes that feel both invented and inherited. In that sense, the moon's hidden face is like the sleeping mind's own far side. There is a portion of us that is active in daylight and another portion that emerges only in stillness. We do not control all of it. We do not need to. A restful life includes regions that cannot be fully inspected. This is another reason lunar folklore feels appropriate at bedtime. It does not ask for explanation. It asks for gentle coexistence with the unknown. There are also small cultural details that show how consistently the moon has anchored human routine. In agriculture, lunar timing often guided planting and harvesting traditions, whether by direct observation or by inherited custom. In seafaring, it helped set expectations for tides and nighttime visibility. In religion, it shaped festivals and fasts. In domestic life, it marked evenings for gathering, storytelling, and quiet labor. In medicine, some traditions associated lunar cycles with bodily rhythms, though not always in ways modern science would support. Yet even such associations reveal how deeply people wanted the sky to be related to the body. The moon appeared to pulse with a kind of nearby remoteness. It was far away but not indifferent. It seemed to keep company with earthly life. That is why so many old stories place the moon as witness, guide, or keeper of secrets. And the hidden face, by its very nature, becomes the place where secrets may rest. Not sinister secrets necessarily, often just the private things of the universe, the things that are not for immediate consumption. The moon does not owe us total visibility. Its far side is a natural boundary, a line beyond which our eyes from Earth cannot go unaided. Many human traditions have treated boundaries with respect because they are necessary for shape. Without an edge, a thing becomes vague. Without a limit, attention scatters. The moon's hidden hemisphere gives the visible moon a shape of completeness. It is not just a lit disk in the sky. It is a body with volume, side, and depth. Even our word face suggests personhood, and a hidden face implies character. We do not see all of a person at once. Perhaps it is fitting that we never saw all of the moon at once either. There is a modest lesson there, quietly offered. Patience changes the meaning of the unseen. What was once a blank becomes a known contour. What was once a projection becomes a landscape. What was once myth becomes a measured terrain without losing its symbolic gravity. The far side of the moon is now photographed, studied, discussed, and planned for in future exploration. And yet it still sounds like a place from a dream. That is because the moon itself remains a dreamlike object, even when reduced to data. Its size relative to Earth, its precise placement in our sky, its role in eclipses, tides, and calendars all give it an intimacy that is not ordinary. It is the only celestial body most people can point to and feel they know by acquaintance. And because we know it so well, we are especially aware of what we do not know. Ancient eclipse watchers understood that the heavens could conceal as well as reveal. During an eclipse, the moon or the earth briefly interrupts the normal arrangement of light. Shadows cross familiar forms. The sky behaves like a myth for a little while, then resolves into ordinary order again. Such events must have been deeply moving in antiquity. They still are, even now. The moon's hidden face can be thought of as an eclipse that never ends from one direction, a permanent concealment paired with reliable return. One side always faces the world, one side always faces away. The relationship is as steady as a heartbeat, though much slower. This steadiness is perhaps why the moon feels so good in stories of longing. It is always coming back. Even when it disappears, it comes back. That returning quality is central to folklore. Stories of the moon often center on separation that is not final. Someone goes away, but only for a time. A divine figure descends but promises to reappear. A bright form is hidden, but only until the next phase. The hidden face expands this narrative into a structural truth. The moon itself is never all visible from Earth, yet the visible portion returns in cyclical grace. What is hidden is not lost. It remains in relation. There is comfort in that. Some things in life cannot be seen directly for long stretches, but they continue to turn. A friend, a memory, a place from childhood, a language almost forgotten, a duty set aside, a grief that has gone quiet rather than ended. These too have their lunar rhythm. The moon also bears a strange relation to human memory because it is so easy to rediscover. A person may go many nights without looking up, and then one evening the moon is there again, startlingly bright or delicately thin, as if it has been patiently waiting in the same place all along. This creates the sensation of reunion. The moon is a recurring guest. Its hidden face, though never visible in the old sense, participates in that recurrence by representing the moon's fuller being. We know there is more to the moon than the sight permits. That knowledge can be restful. It means the visible thing is not impoverished. It is merely partial, and partial things can still be beloved. In some quiet corners of science history, the first images of the far side were received almost like dispatches from an alternate realm. They showed a landscape that looked harsher, brighter in some places, more crowded with marks of ancient collision. It was not a second moon in the fantastical sense. It was simply the other half of one moon, but that other half altered the emotional map of the night sky for many people. Once seen, it could not be unseen. The moon became even larger in meaning because it had acquired a visible double aspect. The same body that had anchored poetry and calendars for millennia had now revealed a hidden terrain. Human knowledge had not diminished the moon's calm. It had widened it. There is a deep beauty in that widening. Ancient civilizations could not have known all the details we know now, but they knew the moon's rhythm intimately through lived experience. They knew its punctuality, its influence on night travel, its use in marking sacred time, its way of making the dark seem less empty. They also knew by intuition, if not by mechanism, that anything so regular must contain a measure of secret depth. The hidden face confirms that intuition. The moon is not a flat emblem suspended on a painted sky. It is a world. A small world, yes, but a world with regions, hemispheres, mountains, ancient impacts, and a side forever turned away from our domestic gaze. That fact itself can be meditative. One can let it settle like dust in still water. And after all the old myths, all the measurements, all the spacecraft, all the maps, The moon still rises in the same way over rooftops, trees, fields, and water. It still finds windows. It still lays pale pathways across dark lakes. It still makes even ordinary neighborhoods seem touched by a larger order. The hidden face does not interfere with this. It deepens it. For if one knows that beyond the visible light there is another hemisphere full of ancient craters and silent plains, then the small bright side above the garden or the street feels less like an isolated ornament and more like the visible edge of a larger, patient whole. This is perhaps the softest truth the moon offers us. What we see is not all there is, but what we see is still real. The visible moon is not a deception. The hidden moon is not a negation. Together they make a fullness that cannot be held in one glance. Human life is somewhat like that too. A person is partly visible and partly inward. A history is partly documented and partly lost. A family is partly remembered and partly unknowable. A civilization is partly excavated and partly buried. A dream is partly narrated and partly forgotten on waking. None of this needs to be alarming. It can be gentle. It can be enough. The moon teaches this without insisting on it. There are places on Earth, ancient observatories and quiet ruins, where people once stood and tracked the moon against stones, pillars, and carved alignments. At sites such as these, one can imagine the long attention of generations. Someone noticed where the moon rose on one night. Someone returned the next month. Someone recorded the shift in a tablet, a notch, a song, a temple orientation, or a ceremonial cycle. The moon rewarded this patience by remaining itself while changing enough to require notice. That balance of sameness and variation is part of its peace. It never becomes boring, but neither does it become chaotic. The hidden face extends that same balance. It is always there, always turning, always beyond the familiar edge of sight. And perhaps that is why it fits so naturally into bedtime narration. Bedtime is a time when the visible world loosens and the unseen becomes comfortable. The room grows dim. The day's hard surfaces soften. The mind begins to accept that not every detail must be completed before rest. The moon, ancient and patient, offers exactly that lesson. It is the companion of unfinished things, of phases not yet full, of hidden sides that do not need to be conquered tonight. If ancient people made offerings to lunar gods, or timed rituals to lunar phases, or told stories of moon dwellers and moon journeys, they were honoring this same rhythm of partial knowledge and recurring light. They were saying in their own languages that mystery can be a companion rather than a threat. The far side of the moon remains, even now, a place where imagination can rest without being corrected too quickly. One may picture the silent basins, the overlapping craters, the long shadows in low sunlight, the blue earth hidden beyond the horizon, the instruments listening for cosmic murmurs, the dust lying undisturbed in spaces where no wind has ever moved it. One may picture future travelers standing there, not in a rushed or triumphant way, but in a careful and almost reverent way, aware that they have reached a place long known by name and only recently by image. Such a future would not cancel the old folklore. It would continue it in new materials. The hidden face would remain a symbol, even as it became a destination. For now, though, it is enough to let the idea remain soft. The moon's far side is real. It is ancient. It is cratered, quiet, and without the familiar dark seas seen from Earth. It has never shown us its full face directly from the ground where our species has lived and dreamed, and that somehow feels appropriate. Some relationships are strengthened by the persistence of a little distance. Some understandings are made gentler by incompleteness. Some beauties are better approached in half-light. The moon has always known this. Its hidden face is not a refusal. It is an invitation to patience. So the old world and the modern world can meet here without tension. The priests counting months, the sailors reading the tide, the storytellers placing immortal figures in the sky, the astronomers mapping basins, the engineers tracing radio silence, the children imagining a luminous companion over the roofline, all may rest in the same lunar evening. The moon's visible side continues to brighten the night. Its hidden side continues to turn in solemn, unobserved grace. And between them lies the quiet truth that the universe is broader than a single glance, but still kind enough to reveal itself little by little. There are many things like that. Stars too faint to see until the eyes adjust. Memories too gentle to return all at once. Old languages whose meanings survive in fragments. Ruins whose stones keep their shape after the people are gone. Seeds that wait through cold seasons. Tides that rise with invisible promptings. The moon gathers all these patient patterns into one calm emblem. The hidden face adds another layer. Even the emblem itself has an unseen side, a region of its own privacy. This is not a loss, it is a form of depth. And so, as the night grows deeper, let the moon remain what it has always been to the human heart, a steady lantern for the outer world, a keeper of calendars and myths, a witness to old rituals, a traveler with one face turned toward us and another turned away into its own long silence. Let the ancient stories drift around it like soft cloth. Let the scientific facts rest beside the legends without disturbing them. Let the far side be far, and let that distance be peaceful. The moon needs no interruption to continue its turning. It asks only that we watch when we can and rest when we cannot. The hidden hemisphere goes on in its own quiet weather of stone and shadow. The visible hemisphere continues its bright and familiar companionship. Earth keeps its place beneath them both, and in that shared arrangement there is a promise as old as night itself. What is distant can still be near in meaning. What is unseen can still be part of home. What is mysterious can still be gentle. The moon turns, the centuries soften, the stories settle, and sleep at last may come as naturally as moonlight over still water.